Thank you ever so much for coming to today's webinar. My name's Charlotte Elmer. I run the Business Coach Directory, and I'm joined today by Kezia Luckett, who's the founder of CultureSight Global and the tool Positive Impact Mapping, who's our feature speaker for today. So just to give you some context of how this has come about, Business Coach Directory was established around five years ago. It was a COVID initiative of mine to support coaches and consultants to develop and grow their business through advertising through a directory. As we all know, the world has changed, and so has the Business Coach Directory and our approach to market. So it gives me the great pleasure just to give you a couple of minutes of just telling you a little bit more about the Business Coach Directory. And it's not just business coaches, it's open to anybody who works with organisations, fundamentally, anybody who coach or consults with organisations. That's where the terminology comes from, okay? Our business coach directory is structured around three pillars of how we go to market, and we're just really starting the promotion of this. And this is one of our first initiatives we've done for quite some time. We have Business Coach Directory Connect, which is fundamentally the directory part of our website where individuals such as yourselves, if you're a coach or consultant, can subscribe to the directory and advertise your wares, as it were. And the platform's enabled for you to do that with regards to demonstrating what your accreditations, if you've got any university degrees, and we verify all of those for you upon application. And we do that for everybody that signs up to the directory. We have our second pillar, which is around learning and development, which this falls into today as well. And this is where we offer valuable training programs designed to empower all of us as coaches and consultants to continue to develop through all the work that we do. As we know, we're never finished articles. We're continually having to evolve and develop, particularly with new tech and ways of being and ways of thinking. So that's what we're doing as part of what we're doing today, and we're looking to really develop more of an academy for our coaches and consultants who are looking to really establish themselves more so for the future. And the third part of Business Coach Directory is Business Coach Directory Empower. And this is where we allow ourselves to connect with like-minded individuals today, get to know some other people that are in our fields. And this is really about creating the environment for us to share our insights and build longer-term relationships. This area of what we offer here is fundamentally going to be held through a monthly webinar, which will link to learning and development, but also quarterly community-based initiatives where we will come together and we will learn from each other, talk about our business. We might do some kind of exploration and facilitation in the coaching environment. We might look at some issues that some of us might have within our organisations to unpack those as well. I'm really proud to say that come October, we'll be hosting our first in-person event in Oxfordshire. We're just finalising the details to really start bringing coaches and consultants together, and we'll bring together guest speakers in that environment as well. So as you can hear, we've really been thinking about what do we want this to look like for the future for the Business Coach Directory. And I'm really proud today to say that the second and the third pillar of learning and development and community and networking is where we're focusing today with regards to really kicking this journey off again for the Business Coach Directory. The reason why we've decided to take this approach is that we recognise that a directory, and you might think, or a directory, you might even think like Yellow Pages, for those of you that are old enough to remember the Yellow Pages, or Thompson Pages, if you remember those as well. Directories were something that was so important for businesses when they first started out, for us to all sell our wares, as it were. But that's not enough anymore. We recognise that we still need to promote ourselves. We need to learn all the time, but also the community and the networking part is actually where lots of work comes for coaches and consultants. It's actually about the people that we all know with regards to the opportunities that we have. So we've kind of developed this complete ecosystem to bring us all together. And that's fundamentally why the Business Coach Directory exists. We commercialise ourselves through a small monthly fee for coaches and consultants, starting around £15. And I'll talk more about that at the end of today. This isn't a hard sales pitch, but this is about for you to really think about, is this something you'd like to be part of longer term, while also continuing to learn about the future of work, which my good friend Kezia will be talking about very shortly. So first of all, thank you ever so much for attending today. It's great to have you with us, and I'm going to pass now over to Kezia to kick off our learning and development session around the future of work.
Fabulous. So now I'm just using the modern technology. Bear with me. Right. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you, Charlotte, for the introduction. Now, I wanted to start our session today sharing a conversation that I had recently with some international strategists, because I think it really sets up where we're going to be going today and what we're going to be discussing. And something that they said really stuck with me. And whilst they acknowledge the interest in AI definitely isn't going anywhere, we all know the AI is coming in thick and fast in ChatGPT, AI agents, and so much more. They all believe that by the end of this year, 2025, and moving into the beginning of 2026, we're going to see a massive shift, kind of a redirected focus on what makes us uniquely human and how we can utilize that to help organizations flourish and thrive. And it kind of makes sense because while everybody's obsessing with, artificial intelligence over here, there's something missing about human intelligence over here that will counterbalance it. So it's a great place for us to be able to start, because when we look at organizations, and regardless of whether you're working in an organization or working with organizations, the workplace has never been more complex than it has been, up until this point. And I believe that we're seeing kind of three massive shifts. There are many others, but three massive shifts that are happening simultaneously that are creating the perfect storm. And the first is, as you would imagine, the AI revolution. And for me, as a positive psychologist, it's not just about technology adoption. It's about the human response to that technology adoption. And I was recently doing an event for Google, and their biggest concern for that event was how we could build AI confidence in our people. But I think they're missing a bit of a focus from the employee's perspective, because the employee's biggest fear is, will AI replace me? And I truly believe that there is a beautiful irony in this, because as AI gets smarter, we actually need to get better at being more human, because AI can process the data, it can analyze the patterns, it could even simulate empathy to a certain degree based on the algorithms. But can it create genuine trust between two people that have never met? Can it inspire someone to take a risk that they're afraid to take? Can it make somebody feel truly seen and valued for who they are as a person? And can it sense the unspoken tension in the room and know exactly how to shift it? These are human aspects that we do so naturally, but AI won't have that capability, maybe not for a very long time, hopefully. Secondly, we've got the generational divide. And for the first time in history, we've got four generations working side by side, from the baby boomers through to Gen Z or Gen Z, depending on how you phrase it. And many of us have heard kind of the sweeping references regarding Gen Z. We've seen the memes, we've seen the TikToks, we've even seen these articles put together about entitlement and unrealistic expectations and analogies of kind of the snowflake generation. But as a positive psychologist, I view this generation slightly differently. There is no mistaking that Gen Z is fundamentally rewriting the rules of work, and they've got a good reason to do it, because they've witnessed their Gen X parents. I'm a Gen X parent. They've witnessed them burn out. They've witnessed them sacrifice their health. They've witnessed them sacrifice relationships for career success. And they've actively decided not to go down that route. They want a totally different work experience. They want one that's kind of built on balance and purpose and meaning and connection and truly being able to make a difference and this sense of belonging. And as we kind of think about our Gen Z, and I think, Charlotte, we could do a whole session just on Gen Z alone. I really invite each and every one of you to look at some of the similarities as well as some of the differences, because I was reading a research paper at the beginning of this week, and there are some similarities, quite a lot of similarities, and one of the biggest ones that is a top priority for all of the generations is employee well-being, and we're going to come to that a little later as we go through this webinar. Then we've got the distributed work revolution, and we know that COVID didn't just change where we work, it fundamentally changed how we relate to each other. And I truly believe right now that teams are more connected than ever before through technology, but paradoxically, we're also more disconnected than ever before from a human perspective. And if we think about it, we're all sat in front of one of these. Even if you're in an office, the chances are, if you want to, have a conversation with somebody about something, you're likely just to drop them an email rather than getting up, walking over to them and having a conversation. For those of them, for those individuals that are working remotely or in a hybrid, environment, quite often these screens are just blackouts, they're squares. And when this happens, we kind of miss those micro moments of actually building relationships. The casual, how was your weekend conversations and the quick check-ins, and the ability to be able to see when somebody walks through the office and know whether or not they're having a tough day just by the way that they're working. A lot of that is gone, and it's been replaced with Zoom and Team and Google Meets, fatigue, isolation, and trying to build these meaningful conversations and meaningful connections through a screen. And I want to share with you, I've got some research here because I wanted to share this with you because the well-being cost is real. People are lonelier at work than ever before, even when they're together in meetings all day. And this has kind of led to leaders thinking that they know what's happening in their teams, but actually the reality is quite different. So this research is from Right Management, 2024, and it says 83% of leaders say their employees are highly engaged, but only 48% actually agree with that. And if we look, I think it's 8.9 billion or even trillion it might be, is being lost on disengaged employees right now. It's a big problem. And Gallup had similar kind of, studies. They revealed that 74% of managers believe they listen well, but only 34% of employees feel that they're actually heard. So this kind of brings us to what I call the leadership blind spot. And there are two questions really here. How are things going versus how are things really going? And, anybody that's working with organizations and teams will know that there is quite often a disparity between how a leader views how things are going and how things are actually going, especially when we look at technology. A leader can look at a dashboard. They can see that productivity's up, that deadlines are being met, that people look like they're showing up to meetings, but everything looks fine on the surface. But underneath there's often a completely different story unfolding that they just cannot see. And most companies are hiring coaches and consultants, consultants when they're experiencing problems that they can see but they can't solve. But when we think of that, many leaders can identify the symptoms, but they're often completely wrong about the root cause. I guarantee that every single one of you that's listening at some point in time has been brought in to an organization to solve one thing, only to discover that the real issue was something completely different. A CEO might think that they have a strategy problem, when in actual fact they have a communication problem, or a leader believes they need better processes when actually they just need better relationships, or even a team that thinks that they have a performance issue when actually they have an energy drain. And this brings us on to relational energy, which is going to be, the main point of where we're focusing today. So I want to start by just giving you an understanding for those that may not necessarily know a lot about relational energy. If you imagine that in every interaction that you have, there is some form of energetic exchange. And we all know that some of those energetic exchanges can uplift, inspire, and motivate us and make us feel absolutely amazing. And then we've got the other end of the spectrum, those ones where we walk away feeling drained, deflated, and totally demoralized. And quite frankly, if we could fake our own disappearance so that we never have to deal with that person again, that would be great. But relational energy is actually something that has been researched for the last 20, 25 years. And it really is the hidden force that drives everything. If we're looking at team dynamics, it's really the driving force that sits behind that. And I know a lot of people can get turned off by the word energy. They might think it's a bit woo-woo or a bit kind of, emotional. But today I really want to talk about the science that kind of sits behind it, because when positive psychology came out, and as a positive psychologist, I'm incredibly grateful that it did, came out towards the end of I think it was 1998, Martin Seligman, who was the president of the Association of American Psychology, decided that there needed to be a counterbalance to the standard psychology, which focused on what was going wrong with people. So positive psychology is the scientific study of what makes people, organizations, and communities flourish and thrive. And out of that came something called positive organizational scholarship. And that's really about taking positive psychology and dropping it into an organization perspective. And the University of Michigan, which is probably the best known research center for relational energy, there were three main individuals that kind of built one on top of each other's research. The first was Jane Dutton. She was looking at exploring high quality connections and relationships. And she started to ask some fundamental questions, such as what makes some workplace relationships energizing and others draining? And how do these relationships affect not just the individual, but the entire system as well? And if we think about the system being the team, the department, or the organization as a whole. And Wayne Baker then built on that research. He started looking into the networks and how those positive relationships can actually drive performance. And he started mapping the invisible connections that actually make organizations work, not the organizational, hierarchical charts, but the real influence and energy networks that touch on the bottom line, productivity, performance, engagement, turnover, absenteeism, all of those things that are really important. And then Kim Cameron was studying organizational virtuousness and what made a good downsize. And he discovered something that really changed everything. Organizations, and this is common sense when we think about it, organizations that maintain positive relationships during difficult times actually perform better than those that didn't during layoffs, restructuring, crisis, etc. The human factor wasn't just a nice to have, it's a competitive advantage. And for any of you that like listening to your podcast, if you check out Diary of a CEO, he was interviewing Brian Chesky for Airbnb. Brian Chesky talked about this when he had to lay off thousands of people at Airbnb during COVID time. So it's a really interesting one to read. So to listen to. So relational energy. I've written it down there. This is the official term. It's the increased level of psychological resourcefulness generated through interactions with others that leads to an increased capacity of work. It's a bit of a mouthful. The easiest way to describe it is it's the psychological boost that people get from those interactions that inspire and motivate them to perform at their best. Or even better yet, I think Maya Angelou said it beautifully when she said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. And I want to put that in a business context. Every interaction that we have with someone else either adds to someone's energy or it depletes them. So every meeting, every email, every casual conversation is either putting a deposit in or a withdrawal out. And we all know those people that put the energy in, those people that inspire and motivate us, and those that do the complete opposite. And they're often referred to as mood hoovers, drainers, energy vampires. And I want to be able to give you a different perspective on those as we move forward. So thinking about relational energy, I want to be able to give you some of the the data, the cold hard data, because many people, want to see the data that sits behind it. So when looking at relational energy, they have discovered that your position in an energy network, if we imagine a team, and I'll show you a diagram of an energy network in a minute, but if we think about an energy network, somebody's position in that energy network is far more important for predicting performance over and above information or influence. And when Kim Cameron wrote his book, and if you haven't read it, I highly recommend, if you've got an interest in relational intelligence, Positively Energizing Leadership, they did a meta-analysis of over 500 studies, and it showed that positively energizing organizations, those with high relational energy, have significantly higher creativity, motivation, health and well-being, self-regulation, along with kind of lower absenteeism and turnover. And it makes sense. If you feel inspired and motivated to perform at your best, then of course, if you've got lots of people in a workplace operating from that space, that all of those things will be true. But the beautiful part about relational energy is it doesn't just stop at work. The Center for Positive Organization shows that when people experience positive relational energy in their workplace, it spills over into their home lives as well. They become better parents, they become better partners, they become better friends. And that ripple effect goes way, way, way beyond the office walls. So last but not least, I want to share with you when I'm talking about that person's position in the energy network, when we look at relational energy networks, we are as an organization specifically looking for a variety of different individuals within that relational network. And one of those is a positive energizer. And a positive energizer will be the key connector and influencer within that network. And if I just tell you that the positive energizers often aren't necessarily sat in leadership positions, and successful organizations will have 3 times as many positive energizers within their teams and departments than others. It's really important to be able to find and locate these people for a variety of different reasons, from, finding a whole new talent pool through to how can you bolster change management or roll out initiatives within a team that will be readily accepted. And when they did the research on positive energizers, they looked at what makes a positive energizer. And they found out that this wasn't about whether or not it was a personality trait or whether somebody was extrovert or introverted. It was down to character attributes, all of which can be learned. And this is good news for an organization, because when we can identify the positive energizers, we can spread that positive energy further. So I wanted to just share with you the 15 core characteristics. Now, not all positive energizers will have all of these things, but there's quite a lot here to unpack. I'm not going to touch on all of them, but helping others without expecting payback. We often hear about win-win in an organization. These individuals want to see the very best for other people. They want to be able to help and support them to achieve their greatness. And In doing so, they tend to instill confidence and self-efficacy in other people. They also are brilliant at psychological safety. If mistakes are made or errors happen, rather than berating somebody for these things, they use them as learnings, and they will actively be shared within that team so everybody can learn from them. The other thing to touch on here is that they have incredibly high performance standards. Your positive energizers are going to be the ones that, are operating at a high level. And the proximity to your positive energizers actually increases the performance standards of those around them as well. And again, it makes sense if you're instilling that confidence and self-efficacy into somebody. They also create these networks of other positive energizers that they pull on. So this is the positive energizers, and most positive energizers are experts at relational intelligence, RQ. And I want to touch on RQ right now, because we've had IQ, we've looked at cognitive intelligence, we've had EQ, which has looked at emotional intelligence, and now we've got RQ, relational intelligence. And I would guarantee that everybody that's on this call has a level of relational intelligence, probably a very high level of relational intelligence if you're working with teams and individuals. These are things that you intuitively have harnessed and developed. What we can do now is we can actually track a lot of this relational intelligence with data and show organizations how it's showing up in their teams and departments. So we've looked at relational intelligence and we've broken it down into a simple, easy to understand framework called SPIRE. I'm not going to go through it in too much detail today because I really don't believe that we've got time. But the first thing is really the systemic thinking. And this is the foundation of RQ. It's about seeing relationships as part of a much larger interconnected system rather than isolated connections. And when you have a high systemic thinking, you understand that changing one relationship, if you're coaching one individual, one leader, the ripple effect that can have through the entire network. The next thing that we have is pattern recognition. And again, coaches and consultants, those that work with people on a day-to-day basis, their pattern recognition will be incredibly high. This is about identifying recurring dynamics that others often miss. You will be able to see those patterns playing out in an invisible architecture of how organizations work. And so, for example, you might notice that every time a particular person's included in a planning meeting, decisions get implemented faster and with far less resistance. Or you might be able to see that when certain combinations of people are in the same room, conflict might escalate a lot quicker. And so being able to understand these patterns is 9 times out of 10 an intuitive part of a coach and consultant's role when they're brought into an organization. Then we've got influence mapping, and this is where positive impact mapping comes into its own, and we'll touch on that in a minute, because the formal organizational charts rarely reflect the actual influence patterns that are happening in a team and department. And people with high RQ can identify the informal leaders, the connectors, the positive energizers, those that bridge the gap between one team and the next. And being able to understand where that influence is and how it moves through a team, department, or organization is really where, the real power lies for coaches and consultants. Then we've got relationship awareness. This is your ability to see and understand the invisible connections between people. Who influences who? Where does trust exist and where is it broken? How does information really flow through the organization rather than where the leaders think the information is flowing? Where's energy being created or where it's being depleted through interaction? So it's really about understanding the quality and nature of those connections, because we all know that some relationships that we have in the workplace are transactional. We interact because we have to, and others are energizing. We interact because actually we really enjoy collaborating and working with those individuals. And then last but not least, we've got energy sensitivity. And again, I do want to say here that this isn't about the touchy-feely or overly emotional. It's about being attuned to the subtle signals that indicate whether the energy is flowing positively or negatively. Because when we can sense those energy patterns, we can intervene early to shift them. We can understand what's causing the energy drains and address the root cause. And this is really about being conscious and intentional about the relational energy you create and the systems you're part of. And people often ask me, can RQ be developed? Absolutely. It's highly developable because it's about awareness and intentionality rather than, a fundamental personality trait, which is great news for you. It's something that you will already probably intuitively do, but it's also great news for the organizations that you work with, because developing relational intelligence in itself creates a multiplier effect from a positive aspect. So this brings us to positive impact mapping in action, because positive impact mapping is a tool that we developed as an organization that kind of expands on the thinking from Kim Cameron, Wayne Baker, and the others that went before them. And when Kim and the others were looking at relational intelligence, they did simple activities with organizations to be able to understand and map these invisible connections. And you can see here in the center one of the maps of a team here. And the way that we do it and the way that they did it is we ask one simple question. We know already that employees are absolutely fatigued with engagement surveys and pulse surveys and surveys for this and surveys for that. So we ask one simple question. And the question is, when I interact with Charlotte, for example, what happens to my energy? And they are asked to rate this on a sliding scale, a Likert scale, from 1, I feel de-energized, 4, I feel neither here nor there, and up to 7, which is I feel positively energized. And I do want to put some context around this, because it's not about do I find that person, or is that person positive or negative? So if I give you an example, it could be that I am a new manager and Charlotte is a new person in my team and she needs a lot of support. So every time she walks to my desk with another question, I'm being pushed into overwhelm. And therefore, I'm finding her de-energizing. She's sucking away my energy in this moment. And we can find people de-energizing for a variety of different reasons. It could be a well-being alert. It could be that they're going through some unseen illness that we don't know about, and they're appearing at work in a stressy and agitated state, and we're finding them de-energizing in that way. It could be a communication problem. It could be a variety of different things. It could be that they're just not our people. And we ask this question, and the employees answer it. It takes 3 to 4 minutes tops, and 2.5 minutes of that is watching a video. And out of the back end of it, we get information. We can understand the relational intelligence that's actually happening in that team at this moment in time. It's a snapshot of what's happening. We can see the positivity levels. We can see those individuals that may be in abrasive relationships. We can see individuals that are feeling isolated at this moment in time. We can see those positive change champions. We can see it from a generational perspective. We can see which generations find each other more positive. So we can garnish out a lot of information that you haven't always intuitively known as coaches and consultants, but now you can show your organizations with cold, hard data. So with that in mind, I want to share with you one of the case studies that we've done. It is in the field of hospitality. We have signed an NDA, so we can't share the details with you, but many of their problems kind of feed through into many of the other organizations that we work with as well. So they came to us. They have sites throughout the whole of the UK, and most of their people work on shifts. So you've got a team of individuals that are working in a shift pattern. So even though they're in a team, they might never ever actually get to see each other. So we want to understand, if they're in a team, who do they interact with? Is it somebody else's team that they interact with? How are those connections building positivity within that site? They also had no idea who was driving team success. They had no idea how positive and happy their people really were. Yes, we can look at engagement surveys, but actually, how happy and positive are we, and how does that impact have, and what impact does that have on other people? They had no tangible way to identify well-being issues before they escalated. And quite often, we have mental health first aiders and many other brilliant tools for well-being, but actually being able to grab a problem before they've started and actually, resolve it before it escalates is really important. They also couldn't understand or didn't know which of the working relationships were really functioning and which weren't, because with the shift patterns, it's difficult to see. And this is very similar to kind of hybrid and remote working organizations that we work with as well. And also which job roles were most positive. We can see down to the job title, which job titles are more positive in a team and department. And that was obviously really important to them when looking at, the customer experience on the back end of that. So we did the case study. We looked at 2,700 employees across 406 different sites. And out of that, we were able to identify that they had 802 positive energizers within those teams across those sites. Now, those positive energizers, not only is that a whole new talent pool that you can potentially tap into, they're also great for cross-functional working, from rolling out new initiatives. If you've got some change management going on, these are the individuals that have got the ear of the team. So they're great to be able to identify and utilize. They also found 308 potential isolated relationships, and these were individuals within the team that had 25% less relationships than everybody else in their team. And that in itself gives data that can be utilized. We are speaking to and working with a wide variety of different industry sectors, from law enforcement through to military, and anything that involves high-risk situations. Being able to identify those isolated relationships is really important. And we identified 22 potential wellbeing alerts. Individuals that, for whatever reason, were on the de-energizing side, that were also flagged as potential wellbeing alerts. So what do we do with the data once we've got it? Well, we were working directly with the organisation. Oftentimes we have some of our practitioners that are trained in our tool that are absolutely extraordinary in what they do. And obviously each one brings a different expertise to the table when working with organisations. But for this particular one, some of the recommendations and some of the work that we did on the back end of it was, utilizing those positive energizers to champion some of the new initiatives that they were looking to roll out, bringing them together from different sites to form cross-functional working teams. One of the things that came out of this particular positive impact map was around the whether or not they had positivity anywhere in a job description. And interestingly enough, since speaking with them, we have quite a lot of other organizations where, you know, the job description doesn't actually include positivity in any way, shape or form. So, you know, how do people know that they're coming to work in a really positive workplace culture and expected that this is one of the expectations of them, unless there's some form of touch point on positivity? The other thing that came out of this is we were able to save them money. We can often position coaching or workshops on the back end of a positive impact map, which means that we can be very specific in making sure that we deliver what they need rather than what we think they need. But we also reduced their training costs. They were getting ready to roll out conflict training to the whole of the organization. Well, they only actually had 10 individuals that were potentially in an abrasive relationship. So that managed to be able to save the organization money rather than just redirecting where they're going to spend it. When an organization gets their report back, they are given a positivity scoring, and they were interested in how do they maintain that. So we've been working with them, looking at ways that we can maintain their positivity score and actually increase it. We have a vault called the 90 and 90, filled with positive psychology interventions that our practitioners can use, where they task the positive energizers with spreading and increasing positivity out to 90% of their team and department in 90 days. The other nice thing is you can overlay data. So you can overlay data that they already have. So guest satisfaction scores, revenue, sick leave, all of those things can be overlaid, which gives you a greater lens with which to look at things. And then last but not least is we always recommend a follow-up assessment 6 months later, because positive impact mapping is a snapshot in a moment of time, and it will give them information that we can then use, either ourselves or our practitioners can use, to be able to build in transformational change, coaching, workshops, etc., that will help get an organization from where they are to where they want to go. So we want to be able to make sure or see the changes that have actively happened through those initiatives. So we use positive impact mapping as a follow-up assessment. So I really want to kind of round off here talking about the fact that positive impact mapping isn't another it's not about adding another tool in your toolkit. You know, you already intuitively know about relational intelligence. You already intuitively can sense a lot around relational energy. But being able to actively prove it to an organization with cold, hard data really helps them to understand what you can already naturally see. And so I want to leave you with that, and invite you, I mean, I've got my details here, invite you that if you want to connect, you want to learn more about positive impact mapping, or alternatively see a demo, please feel free to connect. I know we have a session coming up in September that Charlotte's going to touch base on now, that will talk a little bit more about that. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Charlotte.
Thank you ever so much, Kez. That's absolutely brilliant. Well done. Lovely to hear. I always enjoy hearing about positive impact mapping and relationship intelligence. And I think when I was listening to you, I always think about those individuals, and sometimes it's our negative bias. So we automatically go to sometimes the ones that give us that drain. But I think all of us probably can think, gosh, those individuals that zap the life out of us. But actually, it's the individuals that could be scoring your 5, 6 or 7s that we're considering actually, how do we optimize that within organizations? And actually, how do we create communities within organizations more broadly to actually really bring that to life while understanding those that might be scoring a bit lower in positive impact mapping? It's absolutely fascinating. As an absolute advocate of bringing new technologies and thinking to organizations and to people like ourselves, I really feel there's a place for this, particularly obviously, as you said, in the world of AI and what's happening moving forward. And let's not losing the fact that we are still all humans, not robots, when it comes to using a lot of these tools. So please do connect with Kezia. Her details are there. And what do we do next? We'll have a bit of a debrief very shortly of some time for some questions. I'll just wrap up today's session, then we can go into Q&A. As I mentioned earlier, the Business Coach Directory is working with lots of organisations like CultureSight Global, Positive Impact Mapping, which Kez is the founder of. What we figured would be best thing to do is actually do a real deep dive into actually how the tool works moving forward. So if we can actually understand what that might look like to help people understand actually how do we get the data and actually how do we translate that as coaches and consultants into meaningful outcomes for organizations to understand, so they can understand what is how the best place to actually utilize that. And for us as coaches and consultants, we could be thinking about, I could use this data to support potentially a program of work that I already might have with an organization, but they're reluctant to do it because they don't understand the need as of yet. So there's lots of ways we can do that. So Kez will be running that session for us on Monday, the 8th of September, to really take a bit more information with regards to that. A broader webinar series within the Business Coach Directory is in the process of being shaped out for the next 12 months. And we are looking to run a session in September. Again, around evaluating AI tools and their impact. So this is, again, really looking at the technology side of areas and how the AI tools are really bringing the impact into organizations, which will link very much into the human conversation as well that we've been having today. And then in October, we're going to move more of our series into neurodiversity, starting off with regards to the neurodivergent advantage. And I can see I've got Melanie Francis here today, who's an absolute expert in the field. And Bella, I haven't even spoken to you yet, but I'm hoping that you might be interested in supporting this session coming up moving forward. So there's lots of, yes, brilliant. No, and so I was anticipating and hoping that we'd be able to bring this to life together as well. So as you can see, this is how our webinar series is developing. At the moment, these sessions are here to really get the Business Coach Directory moving forward. And what I'm really looking for individuals is to join our community moving forward. If you like learning, if you'd like to be part of something, to learn from other people, and also be part of a broader kind of learning and development network, but also this impact of actually working with other people who are like us in this role, that sometimes can feel quite isolated and lonely, particularly if we run our own businesses and our own practices, to actually build a community of trust and networking where we can share our experience as well, not only in the learning webinars, but more broadly in that third pillar that I demonstrated. So if you'd like interested to learn more of that about that, please do let me know. But for the time being, let's go back to Kez, and I'll open the floor up to any questions that we might have for Kez. If anybody's got a question, feel free to put it in the chat if you don't want to come off mute. But if anybody's got a question they'd like to ask Kez specifically around what she does or what she's spoken about today, please do raise your hand, come off mute. That would be great to hear.
Or maybe I've just answered them all.
Not quite.
Oh, Mel.
Not quite. I knew you would, Mel. I knew you would.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. I'm Mel Francis. I'm a neurodiversity specialist and a HR professional. And because I'm really interested, what you said about job descriptions and how you had been surprised that job descriptions didn't have positivity as an explicit requirement. I'm not surprised that they didn't have it, and it just made me think, right, should we be putting it in? How do we measure it? How do we assess it? All those things that I think are really important. And of course, I think the relational energy is really important too, but it's just that measurement and being explicit about you have to do it is really interesting.
I don't think it was a case of you have to do it, but it's a case of, especially if you're kind of customer facing, you want your people to be, you want them to be positive. But if you've never even actually put it in anywhere in the job description, even if you're describing the workplace, and the environment, how do you expect people to know that that's what they need to be doing? And how do you demonstrate what that looks like? And interestingly, you said about being able to measure it. One of the tools that we're developing at this moment in time, that will be coming out in the autumn, is all around how can we look at those core characteristics of positive energizers, those bits that make them a positive energizer, and how can we actually allow everybody from, school students through to people going for new jobs to actually understand where they sit against some of those factors that would make them a positive energizer. Because it's really interesting. The more I talk to people about it, the more they go, do you know what? I'm far more conscientious now about the email that I send and whether or not I'm coming across in a positive manner, because we get caught up in our lives. Life just happens. We forget, that every interaction is leaving an energetic footprint, and we get to decide whether that's something positive or whether it's the other side, which is something more negative. From the discussions that we have with the postman who's delivering our post through to the person that sat behind the checkout till at Tesco's. If everybody raised their awareness of positivity and how their interactions are having an impact, I think we'd live in a much better world.
Thank you. Really interesting.
No problem.
Are there any more questions for today?
Oh, Michelle. Now, Michelle is one of our lovely practitioners over in the States. So I'm interested to see what she's got to say. And if you're not typing, Michelle, it's saying that you are. So I apologize here. There we go. Hello.
Hi, I didn't know if you'd see me.
I had. How you doing?
It's lovely to see you. And Charlotte, thank you for putting this on. I just loved it. Even though I'm a practitioner, it's just every time I learn more. And I see new ways to use this. And with the work that I do, the issue I always had was, how do I quantify that I deliver keynotes and coaching on activating the awesome. So how do you quantify that? You can feel it after a conference. People go to a conference, they come back, and then by Wednesday they've dropped. They're back, if not worse than they were than when they went. And so this has been a phenomenal opportunity to actually be able to quantify what's happening. But I was just saying that I learn something every single time. I learn how we can just use this more and more, and how really now's the time.
Yes.
More than ever. And I know we've spoken a lot about, I know I live in the States, so DEI is a big, topic at the moment, but this enables me to have conversations about DEI without mentioning DEI. And again, it's so exciting to be able to really talk about being, really approach it when we say, people-centric. This really gives us a tool to be able to be people first. It's not about what box you fit in, really. It's actually how you feel in this moment.
I totally agree with you, Michelle, and I liked what Kez was saying with regards to this isn't just something in your toolkit. It's not. Obviously, it is a tool. That it's something actually that adds value and complements a lot of what we all do already. Just to bring some of the thinking that we already have to, quantified data, so people can really understand this moving forward. And actually, we might see some behavioural patterns as we use a tool more. I'm sure I will, with regards to actually the types of preferences that people actually demonstrate in themselves, and it might link to more to personality types, etc. So, it's really valuable. Carol, you just popped a question in there. Do companies generally recognise the value of this, or do they think they're doing enough already? That is a brilliant question. I think we can probably all answer that.
That is an amazing question. And as Charlotte said, we probably already know the answer to that. It depends on the organisation. We have organisations, and to be fair, we tend to only deal with this type of organisations, those in organisations that want to go from good to great. They're aware that they have been doing some phenomenal work in supporting their people, but actually, how do they get a greater understanding, and how do they take it to a much deeper level. So yes, it's an interesting one. I mean, when we first developed the tool, we spoke with a company in Canada, and I will not name names, but we spoke with a company in Canada, and they just said, well, we already know which people we're going to get rid of, so why do we need it? And it's like, well, this is not what the tool is for. This is about how can we help those people that for whatever reason there's some obstruction to them contributing positively to that team and department, you know, those well-being alerts, those potential de-energizers down this end, and how can we utilize these people, these positive energizers that have cultivated you know, environments around them where they are the key connector, they are the influencer, and they inspire and motivate people daily. So yeah, brilliant question, Carol.
Thank you. That was nicely answered.
Well, look, thank you ever so much, everybody, for joining today's
Yes,
session. Some new faces for me today, so nice to meet some other individuals as well. It's great to see you, and some familiar faces, of course. The recording of this session will be going on a YouTube channel in the next week. It will be available to everybody. Please feel free to join the broader community so you get visibility of the events, and obviously you've signed up to the Business Coach Directory email list from attending this webinar. If you choose to unsubscribe, please do so. That's up to you, but you'll get visibility of future events coming forward. And obviously, please do connect with Kezia if you wish to take any specific conversation forward and attend our next webinar in September. And of course, if anybody would like to be a practitioner, of course, reach out to Kez to learn more about that as well. I'm a practitioner in this field as well, and it's very much in the forefront of people's thinking about what do we do next with our people. So Kez, thank you ever so much again. Lovely to see everybody, and have a lovely rest of your day. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.